This last session is about person or student-centered learning. Since this is the topic, let me just say the obvious. Of course, there are many and historically, significant ways or approaches to person or student-centered learning, and there is a vast tradition, some of which actually come from Italy, my country, like the Montessori school, treating what people call kids, not as kids, but as a young person. Nowadays, and so I personally come, like Carl Rogers, in the tradition of John Dewey, the guy that was heard to say that the problem with schools is that there are too many teachers and too few facilitator of learning. I fully agree with John if he said that. His work actually was about that, how we can become facilitator learning. So, the person-centered approach from which the person-centered education came about has been formulated by Carl Rogers, a famous psychologist from the USA, and one of the so-called fathers. There were actually also mothers like Charlotte Butler of humanistic psychology. That field of psychology that wants to put the person at the center of the field of observation. So the person-centered approach is a scientifically validated, systemic, holistic approach with application all over the world in all the so-called helping profession, which is to say psychology, education, medicine, social work, management, intercultural communication, conflict prevention and resolution, and so on and so on and so on. The specificity of the person-centered approach is that is born in opposition as an alternative to traditional psychiatry and traditional psychology and psychotherapy. So if focus on health and not on psychopathology, on solution and not on problems. In a PCA, the goal is not to cure, but to empower the person to be proactive in his process of change. Is aim to develop, to facilitate the development of the potentialities of individual, groups, organization, and the process is a process of empowerment, so the people become more and more responsible and in charge of their lives, and we do not encourage dependency as old-fashioned, traditional, mechanicistic, reductionistic approach did or do even today. So, why so? Because in any approach, I was just talking at the bar with Gary, every approach at the base, and unfortunately they don't make it explicit, otherwise everything would be much more clear, and we could agree or disagree with an approach. Any approach in the so-called helping profession has the roots, derives from the vision we have about the human nature. And if you have that vision of human nature, that from that vision comes the theory of whatever, if it's in health, of axiopathology, and the theory of therapy. But this is true of us human beings, and no matter what we do. That, in the helping profession is often not explicit. But let's say here we have a conference of potato growers. I would have to explain, if I'm teaching about potato growing potatoes, and then one day French fries maybe, is the nature of the potato. From the nature of the potato descend the ethiopathology of the potato. Let's say potato blight, a serious thing. Millions of people dying in Ireland for potato blight. And so the theory of therapy of the potato, that is all descending from the theory of the nature of potato. So, going from potatoes to human beings, Carl Rogers postulated something that was revolutionary at this time. And it was so revolutionary that people were really shocked. And what Carl Rogers said? Carl Rogers said that what Sigmund Freud and Fred Skinner, one of his famous opponents in public debate, or Watson, the creator of behaviorism, they believed, Sigmund and Skinner believed, and everybody else, that every living organism has an innate biological tendency to be aware at whatever level, the amoeba, the sunflower, and to self-regulate. But they didn't postulate that for human beings. The vision of human nature of human beings was very different. Might be, I think, since I was a Catholic altar boy, because the narrative in the culture was that scarcity paradigm. Human beings were inborn faulty because they have original sin. So, the actualizing tendency, which is called also life, organizes itself in developing the potentiality that, brings any organism towards growth. An acorn falls from the acorn tree, gets into the earth, and has a tendency, doesn't need to go to an acorn university to develop, if it's lucky, the acorn in a full blown tree and give fruits. Also human beings rationalize Carl Rogers. So this tendency is not evil, not at all, is directional, constructive, and present in all living things. So, somebody would say already, where is the place for evil? Don't worry, there is plenty of place, even too much for evil, also with human beings. But, in this theory, evil descends when the natural tendency is stunted and stopped. So, like with any other normal organism, if a potato is not in the soil to grow a full potato plant, but in the kitchen it grows strange shoots trying to desperately actualize itself, but it hasn't the condition to do so. So, for Carl Rogers, every person has the innate capacity to become a fully functioning person. What he meant something close to Abraham Maslow. By the way, Abraham Maslow did all his work and wrote his book in the Western Behavioral Science Institute of La Jolla, California, founded by Carl Rogers and Richard Farson, one of our, fellow and my boss, because I was and still am part of the WSI faculty. A little younger than Abe Melykh. So, what they found? That people that are fully functioning are aware, integrated, in touch with themselves, others, and the world. They have the courage to be profound, authentic, and they trust. They are creative. They have a good capacity to be together others, so affiliation, communication, and they are realistic, they can function in reality. They have, of course, a psychological health, maturity, existential depth, affective self-regulation, respect for themselves, and so having more respect for oneself brings to have naturally more respect for others, more, accepting of others. they are open to experience instead of afraid and, rigidly frozen in a defense stance because they feel trapped no matter what, able to learn from experience. You say, able to learn from experience. Yeah, very big university, the word of experience, but you need to learn from it. Very often we don't. We are not open to that learning. Their personality is healthy, which means mature, fluid, and has not fixed rigidity. It's defending when there is threat and is open when threat is absent. So they have adaptability, flexibility, and resilience. They trust themselves, their organism, their intuition, their feelings, and their value. They have a sense of direction, purpose, and also leadership, natural leadership. Maybe they would never have a formal, appointments, but so for person-centered approach, we see people as being capable to be in charge of their own life and problems. They're not in need of us telling us, go left, go right, do this, do that. They can develop the capacity to do it better than anybody giving them the recipe. So, the role of any professional adopting this philosophy and this science is not doing it for the other, is facilitating a natural capacity, a natural test. So, how? Providing a relational climate that fosters growth and empowerment, enabling their clients, or, their students, to explore and find solutions to their problems and way to reach their goals. Now we will approach the educational. Anyhow, for all the person-centered approaches, the research has confirmed the hypothesis. We have tons of research, 8 years of research, also coming from other people wanting to dismantle this research, which is very useful. Over 7 years of research have confirmed the hypothesis that there is a climate, a relationship climate, that one is an effective facilitator if basically has a high level of respect for the other, of empathic understanding of the other, and a congruent stance. That is not just authenticity, meaning to be saying the truth, but also mental health, the capacity to symbolize without distortion or suppression one's experiences. Let's now move to education, because this kind of education is based from this assumption. For Carl Rogers, the educational system is probably the most influential of all institutions, outranking the family, the church, the police, and the government in shaping the interpersonal politics of the growing person. So, person-centered, or other times it's called student-centered education, have a application that goes from kindergarten for people that are 3 years old to university level and continuing education, adult education. Malcolm Knowles, one of the best authority on continuing education, is a Rogerian. With this for example, little kindergarten students, elementary school students, in the student-centered approach, the most important goal is not to take away what they naturally possess. It's not giving something. It's not to rob them of what? Of some of the most precious things human beings have, which is the innate curiosity, the excitement, the joy of learning. And so, don't rob them of the joy of learning and support them in developing their innate potentialities. In adult students, that learn to become doctors, teachers, architects, engineers, economists, we see personal growth as fully part of professional growth. If there is not personal growth, the professional, in our terms, is dangerous. In a helping profession, we think that if you preach what you don't practice, if you don't walk your talk, you're really dangerous. And you can inflict damage, although you don't want to do that. Because you ask people to open themselves to something that you're not willing to open yourself. So you really are incongruent, dangerous. So personal or student-centered education goal is to protect and promote the innate capacities and the potentiality, and our ambitions are high. We want to graduate people not only to get skilled jobs, which is important indeed, but to graduate them to life as fully functioning person. That's, the ground where they would be solid in dealing with reality, personal life, family life, professional life, but also as citizens. So, student-centered learning is a personally significant kind of learning, and the goals is to create a participatory, possibility in all the aspects of learning. I would make some example to explain what I mean by that. But all, point to self-responsibility. And then a climate of trust where curiosity is cultivated, and the natural desire to learn is nourished and enhanced. Helping students to achieve results they find meaningful. Sustaining the excitement and the self-initiating discovery, so supporting creativity. And also, let's talk about the teachers. The teacher's person. He organizes the school that don't see the teacher's person, and then don't see the need of teachers to grow in the process of their profession. So, for teachers, it's tantamount, in order to be good teachers, to be fully supported and be passionate about the joy of learning. You teach, by example. And if you really feel that learning is a juicy adventure, that you want to learn as much as you want to chew on a rich, flavorful fruit, then you really convey much better than many words the point. So, the point is also to facilitate awareness, so inner processes. So, Carl Rogers, as I mentioned quickly, see that the classroom is a place to support and facilitate the actualizing tendency, the vitality of the students, and the teachers need to be able to really express in their relationship with their students and among fellow teachers relationships that are congruent, that are genuine, that are authentic, and that they respect others not as a formality, but as fellow human beings. you cannot communicate this to students just by saying or writing with the chalkboard. You know, you have to embody it in a day-to-day experience. That's why it's so fantastic to be a person-centered facilitator of learning. So, you know, there is no way this can hardly be conveyed if the teacher, you know, is pointing and all that. And so it should be clear that it's not a technique. It's a way of being. You cannot cheat on this. You know, people feel it. You are or you're not. Thank God. The research shows that if the student believes that the teacher, the so-called student-centered teacher, is for real, they have better results. We go to more. What are some of the results? You can find this all in the, you know, more in depth with the research materials that are for this specific presentation. And if you Google, you find tons of this material. Teachers that are trained in student-centered education are better able to apply their learning in the classroom. There is a direct positive relationship between teacher and student-centered behaviors and their students' learning and even score achievements. Then there is better result on attendance. Students are less absent from the classroom. I remember Reinhard and Annemarie Tausch in Germany did a research, now Annemarie is dead, but the research on 50,000 German teachers, put in a recording and see who was speaking the most. If the teacher was the person speaking the most, that wasn't so good for student-centered teacher. In the classroom where they're student-centered, the students have more space to interact, for example. And so they have also positive result on mental health. Students have more, you know, self-esteem. They improve their self-concept because they're treated with respect, real respect. They're not humiliated. And it's interesting, the research said that the school principals that apply this approach, this philosophy, they have more teachers that are effective student-centered, of course, because where teachers go against the boss will, you know, there less result, and the students show better results. So if the whole institution promote, you know, trust, respect, exploration, creativity, all the better. You don't need a tons of research. Any intuitive, you know, a person understand that, of course. It's like saying in a democratic society, people are more free to express their belief system. Well, let's do a lot of research. That's important, but we knew that. So, creativity, reliability and being constructive, a rich and full life, the fully functioning individual, as we were saying before, means that this, you know, is really impacting society, not just student personal lives. I go fast because I still have quite a lot of things that I want to share. So, the purpose of person-centered or student-centered education is to protect and promote the person's innate creative capacity of learning from their experience. Instead of write 10 times, you know, learning from your phenomenology. That's what life is all about. That's the adventure of humankind on this planet. If, you know, we didn't start and went to the universities, a cave university, to promote wholeness and integration of the individual by focusing on the student's personal growth and development, to promote the development of creative and competent members of society able to contribute effectively to the life of their communities. What is the role of the student, of the teacher in such philosophy? A real commitment to facilitate learning and to a democratic management in a explicitly, value-explicit education project. To share her or his passion about learning, to be able to relate to the student with respect, empathy, and congruence, as we saw, to be capable to be in touch with oneself, the students, and the member of the teachers' community and the community in which the school, and also to the world, to be a responsible and sustainable citizen, we say today. Wanting and having the needed skills and attributes to be a facilitator of learning, so I need to do upgrading of, continuing education, supervision, and to be an effective mentor for the students and to foster their creativity and autonomy. This seems so nice, but it's pretty hard at times for teachers, traditionally trained to be teachers, do this, to lead and trust the process and to have trust that the students will do something that I don't think that they should do, but can I trust the process? Instead of reprimanding all the time and being having back. And so, also to help the students with their personal and social skill. We know also something about Italy. Our institute has trained about 30,000 teachers, Italian teachers from state schools, and about 1,200 school principals. We have a project that Irene actually is the director of all this small time limited project of training, which is called Teacher Effectiveness or Parents Effectiveness, that a colleague of Carl Rogers, student of Carl Rogers, developed, Thomas Gordon. Okay, so learning to take responsibility. If I'm a student, learning to take responsibility for my personal development. To be interested in developing social skills in problem solving. Learning how to learn, the process. Learning from mistakes, what usually we learn to hide and not to be punished. Willing to contribute to a cooperative and tolerant school ethos. Able to learn how to relate to oneself, others, with respect, empathy, and congruence. This is what we derive from research. What are person-centered practices? Well, is something that combines the person-centered thinking or theory with the person-centered planning. So you have to plan for all of this. It's not just, haphazard. So I don't going to repeat trust, transparency, and understanding, but planning, it means not top-down, but, involving all the stakeholders. Not to be dictated by the will of the students and the dictatorship of the students. No, there are some, things, but we decide together that, and we experiment, and we learn from failure. I'll describe some of these actual things, projects. Education. Together with family and culture, is one of the fundamental building blocks of the social construction of reality. It's Zucconi here that is right. Education is one of the main narratives. I want to say, because Carl Rogers didn't mention, social construction of reality, because then it was not a concept. It would be Berger and Luxman in '68 in Germany, actually creating the field of sociology of knowledge. But he was talking about the construction of experience, individual and societal construction of experience. Education is one of the main carriers of value, and value can be implicit and explicit. I'm sorry, I repeated 10 times, but when I was writing this. So, in person-centered education, values are made explicit to facilitate students to have a critical and proactive role and effective training to become fully functioning members of the polis. It includes me to allowing disagreement and expressing disagreement without punishing people to disagree with me. So, I think, for example, that what we do as World Academy, World University Consortium, and also my institute were the three entities first to endorse and actively promote the Poznan Declaration. What is the Poznan Declaration? Something that when you know about it, you don't, I hope your institution would endorse. Because it's a call to all the educational institutions to teach ethics in their course. And so, the research is really encouraging. And this school principal said, we believe that students learn by doing, and they are the most engaged when they are doing, self-directed activity. The goal here is for students to have the ability to think critically, communicate clearly, with an advanced level of preparedness for the academic and career paths that await them beyond those walls. Now, let's have a few examples of what we're talking, the nitty-gritty. For example, at our institute, that is an institute that was founded by Carl Rogers, I was very young then, and Charles Devonshire, and is in several. We have, for example, in Italy, we are a postgraduate institution. Our degrees of, we call it specialization, for example, to doctor and clinical psychologists, they study 4 years after their doctorate to become psychotherapists. For example, we have a co-manager, we have a facilitator of intercultural communication, but we don't see that as a course, a postgraduate course. We see this from the very beginning is a learning community, and we select people, to enter in this community that already have shared value, the competitive value, and we don't want to force value to anybody. And so students and professors, we call ourselves staff, create a facilitate climate. And the fundamental assumption, there is no professional growth without personal growth. So a lot of hours are just encounter group, labs, self-directed activity. And how we have examined, that was harder to convince the Ministry of Education that it was more scientifically valid than traditional exam. The students have to write their self-evaluation, present their self-evaluation in their training group, maximum 20 people, and receive the feedback of every fellow student, participant, and also the feedback of every professor, staff. The only person that doesn't express publicly is me, because I'm the person that has to sign their diploma, and I don't want to label anybody with critique. I give them in private, because I want this. And so, my aviation is sometimes they fight. It's like, no, and but it's a much more reliable. Sometimes we find that they are too harsh on themselves, so that, in our opinion, and what the students give themselves the grading, but they give us the grading. Not only the professor, they write anonymously suggestion for each professor how they appreciate what is good and suggestion for what we can improve. They evaluate every single staff, also, staff like secretary. They evaluate the bachelors, and all the evaluation then we discuss it, and we have a restitution. This critique we share, and this critique we try to do better in this and this way, and this critique we do not share, that's important that you made it, but we do not think we have to change for this and this reason, or sometimes we can't. The ministry doesn't allow us to choose any, internship location because they have to approve the internship location and stuff like that. If somebody cannot pay tuition, we have a discussion and we're flexible about paying tuition. We have scholarship, but when we do, for example, a conference, we raise some money, not great money, unfortunately, from, we don't want it from pharmaceutical firm, but from, publishing house. We give 100% of that in prizes for best presentation or best research project. But and the students can call a community meeting and discuss a problem that they feel anytime they want. An institution that I have nothing to do, but I think is a great institution, is this younger generation that would change Ukraine, that my friend and colleague and member of the Academy Board of Trustees has created, Bogdan Harrismith Charitable Foundation. And I know so many other people. I'm honored even to know the president of the association. But that's another story. Anyhow, I went to Ukraine and I met these people, enthusiastic, proactive, fantastic. Oh, really? No. Bogdan generously put a lot of money to create this foundation and supporting young people to go abroad, learn from existing excellency, best practice, come back to their country, Ukraine, and be proactive as a Ukrainian professional and citizen. But with great results. Just to show you, one of their people has become Ukrainian Vice Minister of Ecology, and they entered the political, the industrial, the economic, the educational system. Fantastic. More power. I think somebody, I don't know, I don't remember, has even some brochure, younger generation that would change Ukraine. You're welcome to have one. Very quickly, just other, this is the City of Arts and Technology is a high school in San Francisco. The curriculum, strong emphasis on social justice, identity. So, social justice themes are used to empower their students and encourage them to think critically. There is an interdisciplinary dimension, and the students are empowered to do their project, to do some activity in their community about, real issue of the day, racial profiling, death penalty, the issue of racism and how pregnant women in jail are living the immigration, things like that. And in Antioch, the Dozier Libre Medical High School is a 12th grade students that go critically on medical ethics and see ethics across all the disciplines. They had a project reading the immortal life of Henrietta Lacks, this African-American woman that had her body used to harvest stealth sand without her consent or her family consent. In another student learns about eugenetics movement and medical experimentation. In physics, they are developing, design, and building a device to address disability. I mean, real hand-on projects, learning from doing. And I have several others that are all in the slides, but I ran short of time. Right, they are on the website, free for all. So, since the research showed the person-centered education helps a student to achieve academic goals, and more importantly, to develop their potentiality and to be more in touch with themselves, others of the world, what our friend reminds us is also UNESCO goal to the classic, to know, to do, to be. Now they add also to be in a community. I think the research we have is impressive, but we need further research, don't we all need? And especially what we lack. I think we need longitudinal studies that show the impact of this kind of approach, that is not only the only one, but the many approaches in this direction, to see the impact, to follow people all across the lifespan, like in the health field, you follow people for their lifestyle. And since education plays a social construction role in what is reality, we are all united in this, effort to create a more and effective, more person-centered way to educate our best resources, our children. And the retooling, I think, has to start from the frame of reference, from the value, and to create a new paradigm, we need to be all together, not just experts on education. That would be a mistake. If the university knew how to reform themselves, they're not stupid, they would have already done that. But as I said before, there are so many issues. One is power, for example. So, since we really need more urgently to protect and promote human and environmental capital at every level, I think that what we have done without money, but a lot of goodwill, basically, is to create this project, the World University Consortium, and what is different is it's welcoming all the stakeholders. Also, a village without electricity that wants to give a contribution. What, are the frame of reference of a new and more effective education. So each of you here or listening to us or reading us are welcome to participate. You can see it online and in the material. And I think this is a worthwhile endeavor since in our era, what is being called the Anthropocene era by Paul Cruzen, another member of our academy, promoting a process that facilitates the creation of new paradigm and effective ways of education to foster the development of fully functioning person, family, groups, organization, and community. It's not only of vital importance for human beings, it might be of vital importance for the whole planet. So, thank you, and good luck.
I want to thank Alberto for a very important and up-to-date topic, and thank you very much that you noticed the program I'm dealing with. So, as Alberto already mentioned that, I just want to make a short example, tell a bit about our program. because taking into account everything that was told yesterday and today, the program seems to cover both the complex approach to education, the personal-centered education, and also the development of personality. The program, the main goal of the program is to enable young, highly motivated people, already graduates from the universities, to go abroad, to go to 6 the most effective European countries, and to get a complex approach, complex knowledge of political development of the country, economical system of the country, social system of the country, and how this country lives in harmony with ecology. So this is exactly the complex approach to the knowledge. The teams are formed by themselves, so there is neither we select the group nor the head of the foundation, Bogdan, but students from different regions, from different fields of study, they form the group. And here is the question of leadership. We don't have that one leader of the group, but everyone is a leader in his field. That is, they gather together, they choose the country, they prepare the program, and they personally approach the ministries, the NGOs, business institutions. So they organize everything by themselves. This is a good approach for personal development. They feel themselves responsible for what they are doing. And after doing that research, they are coming back home and they are implementing what they have learned both on the state level, on the local authority level, or in the civil society. And as you have mentioned, so one of our graduates or alumni, she is now Vice Minister of Ecology. Another one works for the capital authority, dealing with urban development, so she gained her experience in Sweden. So this is not like higher education, but the one big research trip is also another approach for person-centered education, and it gives also an opportunity to widen the overview, to get to know another culture, another approaches, and to make best of what can be. And another thing I just wanna point out is maybe a bit a historical overview of how the educational system in different deals with market economy. If you go back to the Soviet Union, where we had a planned economy, everything was planned. Both the education was planned. So we had like a state order of how many engineers we have to have in 6 years, how many economists, how many cultural experts. But as everything was planned, everyone got a job. So there was, from one side, you don't have a right to choose, but you are sure that after graduating, you will be given a job somewhere in the Soviet Union. Yeah? Nowadays, with the market economy, it doesn't work like that. You have to be competitive on the market, and if you choose, you have to be responsible for what you choose to study. That's why I think it's very important to have this complex approach to the education. The question is, first of all, who are the teachers that teach? Should we educate more teachers than students, or how can we implement this person-centered approach? Do we grow up the individuals that are just single leaders and can work in teams, or do we grow team workers that can be situational leaders in the field of their professional field, or do we have to have just robots like in Soviet Union? You weren't allowed to ask questions. You were a good professional, you had good quality of education, but that education was just to do your job from this point to that point. Don't ask questions, don't express your opinion, especially if this opinion differs from the party's opinion. We have to think in our paradigm and forming the paradigm for education. First of all, how to combine the cultural differences, how to combine the values every culture has. Do we have an opportunity to create a universal approach for education, or should we make it more flexible for each and other culture? As we know, the work of Hofstede, cultural dimension theory, he pointed out that cultural and society's culture influences the behavior of the citizens and influences their values. So should we take it into account, or should we work out a universal approach for education? Another thing is the complexity and the reality. Can we both make it possible for students to gain an education and feel satisfied and feel confident on the market? Or do we just give them an opportunity to raise their individuality, personality, but then we leave them with this open question: what am I supposed to do on the market? Will I ever find a job? Yes, I'm creative, I'm very gifted, but how can I gain money to survive? The Maslow pyramid, yes, the basic needs. And the last thing is the planet consciousness that we already talked about, and the responsibility. Does the person-centered approach that takes into account the question of responsibility? Do we develop good personality, and do we stress that if you are a real person, a real individual, you have to be conscious and responsible both for what you do, both for the environment you surrounded, and both for the society you are living in? Or is it just a narcissism that I'm the best and I do whatever I want? So that were my comments on the topic. Thank you very much.
It was really very fascinating to listen to Alberto and now to Olga giving us the theory and one very concrete realization of what is the person aim with the education, and even more than education. In a way, of course, as you have heard, this is one of the basic assumptions, one of the basic tenets of the World Academy approach through what we call the human-centered and the humanity-centered new paradigm. Let me just suggest to look at this issue very, very broadly. If you take something of what we are all made, and for instance, we are all made of some atoms and molecules, then all of them are really identical. All hydrogen molecules around the world are the same. Electron, no matter where, is the same to another electron. And by the way, this was so fascinating that Dick Feynman, and already Peter referred to him, he was one outstanding physicist, and an outstanding teacher, was puzzled by that, and then at one time he asked one of his professors, why is that so? So they had a long, a good students call his professor usually at the middle of the night, and then they start discussing, and the other way around. So this was with Dick Feynman. And so one of the conclusions was that maybe there is just one electron in the world just moving around, and therefore having all the time just the same property. When you look at the machines, creation of human beings, you could say that a wheel, and if you reduce just to the function of the wheel, all wheels are the same. Or lever is also just the same. Of course, it can have different color, it can have different things, but basically in this very generic term, all of them are the same. Now then we come to human beings. Yes, there are 7.3 1.16, I believe, billion of us at the moment, and maybe a few more, because I think this was the data on August 15, so maybe it's already pushing more. There will be more, and these are just not numbers. While we can say there are so many cars, there are so many wheels, really each human being is individual. And this is what we know. And this is why it is so difficult to do anything with human beings. You don't just treat them in a very simple way. So when we speak about the human-centered approach, then what we really want to do is to focus on an individual human being, and this is of course what Carl Roger and all of these things has been, all of these thoughts have been in that direction. And of course what we do now is we will have more and more of what is called patient-focused medicine. So a doctor would really look your basic characteristics, your genetic code, and so on, and try to prescribe a medicine that is just for you and may not necessarily be for another human being. Now, of course, superimposed on this, we do look what is in general true. So you do take into account whether there is some epidemic, and you do take that into account. Just like in the case of the education, you do look what is in general appropriate for the entire population, but a good teacher is always focused on one individual. Now this is another important thing and very important for the profession of the teacher. Some of my colleagues at the University of Zagreb here used to say university is a great institution if only there would be no students. No, that is totally wrong. My colleagues at the University of California, who have no obligation of retiring, because this is open-ended, decided to retire, and some of them said to me, you know, it's really, after a while, boring to teach them always the same thing and to have always the same reaction. Now, this in a way shows that they are missing exactly what we are aiming here. Namely, each student is an individual, completely different from anybody else, and this is what we have to do. Some of you were quoting Pope Francis. Let me go and, since I'm President Emeritus, let me quote the Emeritus Pope, Benedict XVI. Benedict XVI actually, and the quotation is the one which I learned from Pope Francis, from his famous new encyclical, Laudato Si. What Benedict wrote is that each human being is a genuine, unique result of the thought of God. And therefore, of course, if you take that position, it means uniqueness of each one of the human being and the necessity of going really aiming in all the respects, just for an individual human being, to have the maximum out of that. And that, of course, comes very close to what just Olga said now. Our former president, Harlan Cleveland, from whom we learn so much, all of us who had the pleasure of knowing him, he was a diplomat, then he was the president of the University of Hawaii, and then he was a dean of the special Human Humphrey Center at the University of Minnesota. He wrote a book where the aim was to say, nobody in charge. Actually, when you think a little bit more, is really everybody in charge of one special things, and it is really this, like an orchestra, where all 7.316 billion people play this beautiful music that actually then comes to be what we want, this human, happy situation where we are all, each one of us, expressing ourselves in a very unique and very different way, and making all of this, somehow happy, uniting as much as it can be. And our friend both of them have religion, is really quite correct when he pointed out the solution of my country is Ukraine, but it could be any country, it is really all over the world, is really in the young generation. And let me repeat what I usually say to my students, so I apologize to them because they have heard it so many times. I said that they are actually the best educated generation that exists. They know more than anyone else. I mean, they had more knowledge now. Each one of them knows more physics than Einstein did, you know, so he's considered to be the greatest physicist ever. And of course, each one of them has their own artistic and creative expression, because as opposed to science that is cumulative, art is not. Art is always a unique expression of all of these things. So you indeed can do quite a lot. It is up to you. You have the maximum possibility to reach, since one actually, except for one person here, I'm the oldest one, so the two of us are the oldest, everybody is much, much younger, and the idea is really, it is you, the new generation, to really take the advantage of this human and humanity-centered approach as the only answer and the best answer that we can possibly have. Thank you.
I would just like to very quickly look at the recruiting process in two companies. Now, employability or how prepared the student is for the world of work is one metric by which we measure how effective education has been. And these two companies that I would like to mention here are Enterprise Rent-A-Car, an American car rental agency, which is the top recruiter for fresh college graduates in the country. The next is Google. Now, Enterprise Rent-A-Car recruits athletes and sports people more than anybody else. And Google believes that in recruiting, technical skills are least important. It's a technology company. Now, it kind of sounds a little strange because this car rental agency, the work there has nothing to do with sport. You don't even need to drive a car there. It's the office work, the paperwork that they need these people to do. But then they recruit sports people because they believe, and it is true, that it is the sports person who knows how to work in teams. Because no matter how good a player you are, unless you know how to work, you cannot single-handedly, back your team to victory or to score or goal your team to victory. Sometimes you just have to let the other person take the winning shot or to score that winning goal. Otherwise, the team doesn't win. And this is something that the sports people are very good at, to work in teams. And so this car rental agency, which is the number one recruiting company for fresh graduates in the country, it believes in recruiting the sports people. And then next, coming to Google. Now this company is all about technology, but then it believes that technical expertise is least important when it comes to employing people. And also, according to the head of recruiting, it does not look at how prestigious the institution is from which the person is graduating, because in his opinion, people from the top colleges, they lack that intellectual humility which the others have. Now the question is not so much whether which college produces humble people or egoistic, but then the point that I would like to focus on is, this company believes that intellectual humility is more important than technical expertise when it comes to employing people, because these people can keep learning constantly. Whereas when that intellectual humility is not there, you feel, oh, I've arrived, I know all. So that the continuous or lifelong learning does not tend to be there. And also, Google, it looks at so many other metrics, which is why it says technical expertise is least important. It sees how responsible the young fresh graduate can be. If the person takes responsibility for the whole project instead of being compartmentalized and saying, now this is my work, this is my division, and this is my duty. So instead of doing that, if they tend to take responsibility for the whole and they are humble and they are team players, these actually determine the career and how good, how effective they are as workers. And I just mentioned this very briefly while talking about contextual education. The grades determine the career only for the first 2 years of the person's tenure in the company. After the first 2 years, it is so many other things such as, humility, teamwork, how responsible they are, how they can work in groups, which tends to really make the difference. And so I would just like to conclude with this. And these I mentioned just to illustrate that all that we heard just now on this topic of person-centered education from Alberto, Ivo, and Olga is so important. It is the subject is just the occasion. What the real subject is the student, the person. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that really interesting set of observations. I was thinking about many things, actually, many, lots of stuff that's gone on. But the question that really stays with me is when we think about the young generation and when we think about Google and when we think about professional education, this group is thinking about the development of a new paradigm for higher education. And my question is, for whom are we imagining this? So at the same time as we've got these discussions around Google and professions, we also have new gangmasters, we have modern day slavery, we have casualised temporary workforces where people are being picked up off the streets to go and participate in labour across the world. So one of my questions is who are we imagining when we're thinking about person-centered education? And the second question is really, is higher education too late? Because shouldn't we have developed the person through schooling and so forth? So what is distinctive about person-centered education in terms of a higher education experience as opposed to a lifelong one? And who are we imagining, and what is the wider context in which we might want to set this in terms of the other institutions that might be around? So that is an entirely incoherent question. I'm just slightly thinking about it. Yeah.
As usual, you are posing an intelligent and very clear question. The answer is very easy. As I try to mention, goes all the lifespan, from 3-year-old to 90 years old. But who shall we and are we addressing this education? Is it for the rich that can afford to develop fully their potentiality? And so is another way to underline exploitation? I think that not only is for everybody, but we have a longer collaboration with the Freire pedagogy of the oppressed.
Yes.
Yeah, and anything that is person-centered and that would be addressing its action and service to a privileged few would be a catastrophe and a betrayal of the value that is supposed to embody. So the point, though, is well taken, because, let me speak again bluntly. I was first in love with the climate of California in '68. I was, and personally, I felt I had to make a decision. Because for me, it was so good. And in the first year I was there, I was able to buy, first year, a house with a backyard, large backyard, and a front yard, California. I had to decide, a thing that we all have to decide. Do I want to have just a successful and rich life for myself and my family and my children, or do I want to fight for a more democratic and just society? Each of us decide what is important in every moment of our life. And as Carl Rogers said, you need the courage to be living a full life. Did I answer you?
I don't think I framed the question. I think I made a random observation. So yeah.
Let's hear other comments. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much for all your comments. I really appreciate it. Just a few comments, mainly on the corporate and the business world. There are lots of things that have happened around the 90s around organization with no management, so lattice organization or management free. And it's been quite successful. Engagement is 5 to 10 times higher in organizations that work without hierarchy. But in the other way around, we found out that it's terribly complex to change a hierarchically based company into a flat organization. I mean, the people, the habits, the value, the purpose really doesn't fit. It has to start really from the beginning, from pioneering leaders who say, no, I'm going to put my money, but just not for a shareholders' return, for the sake of doing something. And that was something that was really, popular up to 2000, still is. And another thing that has emerged is B Corporation. Corporations that work for the benefit of the society. And they actually came back a bit, In B Corp, you have a boss. And sometimes you have a hierarchy also. And I'm just mentioning this because the fact that everybody is free and everybody is capable to set up his own salary, as we've seen in many companies, this liberty, as you mentioned, to evaluate your colleagues or your peer, it happens in business. But it's not necessarily the best solution, one size fits all. I'm just mentioning this because we have this tendency to say, oh, I love this, and I'm going to go. Yes, sometimes what is most appropriate is not a dogma, it's really the context and the situation. I just wanted to say these two things that have been used in business. And one word that's coming for you is also Ernst & Young, that you had in your list. That is not taking university degree as the top index to recruit. It's actually number 3 or 4. So, thank you.
Thank you, Pierre. We're going to listen to a few more people and then wrap it up in a couple of minutes. Winston, then next you.
I've been seduced by self-actualization. But there is a question which is implicit in the Rain's comments. That is, after we exhaust the potentialities of self-actualization in the educational context, where's the self-actualization of that? And one of the points raised yesterday was, we do face a crisis in that larger context of the replacement of labor and skill with new inventions, dynamism, technology, robotics, and so on. In short, we produce self-actualization, but the level of actualization has been preempted by technology system. And the Martin School in Oxford and raised this question a few months ago, in which they said, it's not too soon to think about the idea of allocating some of those benefits of technology and innovation to the labor sector. Maybe that could be distributed in the form of shorter working hours, shorter work week, and so forth. And that those people will actually have an opportunity for self-actualized expression in some other area, and not exclusively in the narrowly defined market of labor. I'm just curious about the question.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to make just a quick comment on responding to Pierre and maybe some part of the Professor Janani. And it's not very well known, but Abraham Maslow actually wrote a book on management. And the title of the book was Youth Psyche and Management.
Yeah.
And I think the circulation was very short. That was probably, the 1965 was the year that the book was published. And what I want to say is that, yes, there might be the case. I mean, the happy worker might not be the productive worker. Sometimes that happens. But that's another, I think, managerial problem. And what is shared among the business, the areas of research and also the practice is that as we are moving into this new era of stakeholders, of course, of running business, this concept of balancing stakeholders' well-being will turn out to be the benefit for the shareholders' value as well. And there are many, many reasons why that actually happens.
Thank you, Steph. Gary.
So just one last point. If it is relevant to that, so maybe you want to pick up on those points first, and then I'll come back.
I didn't hear. Sorry, I'm
So
an old man.
Do you want to pick up on those points first, and
Right.
then come in, because it was a separate issue?
She's asking whether you want to respond to this and then come back.
Yeah,
Why?
it's a different issue. So
Okay, why don't you say now and then we wrap it up?
Okay, well, what I wanted to flag was that what tends to happen in education is we see a massive swing from knowledge-centered approaches to education to person-centered approaches, and they swing from Rousseau to the Enlightenment. We keep seeing this happening. And the most useful approach that I've seen recently is the work of Michael Fielding that draws on the philosopher John McMurray. And what he talks about is the difference between functional and personal relations and functional and personal knowledge. And the critical distinction he makes is that in some situations you might put knowledge up front, if you like, that a functional centered organisation would place the knowledge and the hierarchical structure up front, and a person-centered would place the person. And what we tend to do is try to put the person in the centre and then get rid of the knowledge. His position is to say, actually, both of these elements are essential. You need the functional and the personal. The question is how do you organise institutions so that the functional is for the sake of the personal? So it's to do with switching that in terms of their relation to each other. And that becomes essential because otherwise we don't talk about knowledge and we don't talk about the functional when we talk about the personal. So, Alberto, when I looked at your list of the requirements of the teacher, it was about facilitation, it was about empathy, it was about congruence, it was about alignment, and there was nothing in there at all about knowledge or expertise. It was really in terms of what you might call disciplinary knowledge or expertise. And so, and the risk of that is that you then get a backlash against it, which we've just had in the UK, where somebody stands up and says, yes, but knowledge is important. So if we want to maintain person-centered, we have to say that the functional, the knowledge, is important, but it is for the sake of the personal. It's not the one or the other.
Thank you. So maybe we can start, and I have agreement with Ivo that he's going to give the final wrapping up, and I would have a very quick answer, certainly to your point, because the researcher speaks clear on that. And, in the business world, this idea has been embodied by McGregor and also a lot of other, organization development leaders, Venice, for example, and they seem to have effective results. In terms of what you, Winston, said, where the person-centered then actualization goes into reality, I wasn't clear with one of my slides. I was mentioning that actually we feel it's working because the research showed that when they exit school, they become mature, proactive citizens, and the opposite of new age narcissist. And that's why, is effective. Otherwise, there would be a complete failure. This is another important point that Kerry was raising, but the research, I probably wasn't clear with my pitch in English, but my slides show that what the UNESCO call to know, to do, and to be, we speak in different terms, but top university are using this approach, like Harvard Medical School. It's just that instead of teaching you top down, you figure, how to do it. But so, for example, my institute has been started by Carl Rogers, so, if it was a wishy-washy, I would know. No. Let me give you the answer in my terms. If we would be just about good feelings and not knowledge-based. I mean, there are, exams to pass. To pass the exam, like in traditional university or learning organization, you have 3 hours and we give you 6 questions from this year program. Then, what in traditional organization is done, you take the sheets away. We done. We said, now you go home. You check with the literature, you correct what eventually is missing or wrong, and you bring it back. And we read that, and if they write that Carl Rogers invented the unconscious, we needed to talk, because of course knowledge and skills are very important. Would be a tremendous failure, and again, wishy-washy new age talk if we wouldn't bring citizens to the knowledge. The point of the knowledge, though, not only has to know what is, updated, best treatment for that pathology, but it has to be, if he's a medical doctor, to see the person and to see the anxiety that are, and know that those anxiety are going to affect negatively his immune system. So it's nothing, no shortcuts. It has to be a full, to be able to know, to, actualize the knowledge, but also to be, because we cannot ignore the human interaction and the values.
I mean, can I just say, I don't disagree with that at all. I've got no problem, I'm sure that that's what you do. But education has a politics as well as a practice. And the politics of education is to set these approaches up in opposition to each other. So we need to think about who's going to listen to the arguments that we make and preempt those. And we get in very dangerous water if we don't also foreground the knowledge element at the same time as the person-centered element. And just thinking politically here, rather than making a comment.
We agree. Okay.
All right, it's always, as yesterday, so as today, extremely rewarding to listen to comments of those of you who listen, to those few of us who have a duty to say a few words at this particular moment of time. There are many optimistic things that we said today, and there were a few sentences that you said, Carrie, that really brought me to the other part that I think we have to think very carefully, which always reminds me on the beginning of the famous book by Charles Dickens, The Tale of Two Cities, which I like always to change the tense and change the order and say, this is the worst of time and this is the best of time. Maybe as we speak now, we have to know that every 6 seconds, a child in the world dies because of hunger, which means that during this session, hundreds of children have died. this is the time when these people that we think are getting the best of education, some of them, thousands of them, are indoctrinated to kill and are becoming soldiers at the age of 10 or 12 or something like that. We also have to know that these children, just of that age, are now in kind of the forced or unforced labor, producing some of the things that we all buy, sometimes very unnecessarily, as Ivan Illich would say in a number of these things. On the other hand, this is a world of enormous possibilities. But there are still a number of problems, even in our own areas. Hater before said, Dick Feynman was an excellent teacher. So now we are very much in favor of MOOCs, okay? MOOCs would mean that we could listen to Dick Feynman giving a talk to hundreds of thousands of us. So what would Hater and I do? We would lose our job. No, it isn't. Precisely because of the student-centered and human-centered, what is needed, besides each one of us listening directly to Dick Feynman, you have to have your own local, not teacher, but really, if you correctly use the word facilitator, to help you in that particular moment when you do need something. And then, of course, to try to reply to a question by Winston, we should somehow change this terrible situation, which is only very recent. Let us realize, and of course, those of you who know Oxford Dictionary much better than I can check that, but I was told that 100 years ago, words like employment and retirement did not exist at all. You know, now we actually are fighting for the full employment, but what do we really mean? We mean a full expression of our human capacity, okay? So it is really ironic that now we have unemployed person as correctly Pope Francis calls people who are left out. They are not even exploited. I think it belongs to a collaborator and student of Keynes, I think her name was Robinson, who said that the worst thing than being exploited is not to be exploited, it's to become useless, you know. So now what we have to do is, it is necessary to actually have education and work and employment and play, satisfaction, contemplation throughout life. Not some of these things, you study until you are 22, at 23 you start to work, at 65 you go and retire. The story of retirement, of course, as you all know, was invented by von Bismarck, who at that time, being very clever, one of the best chancellor, asked his people, he wanted to fight the Social Democrats, and said, how do I do something which would be good and which give me the support of the people? He, of course, discounted the Kaiser who really kicked him off, but that's besides the point. So he said, they told him, okay, you give the pension. And then he said, okay, what is the life expectancy in Germany? And he said it is about 45. And he said, if I put it at 70, then they said, all of them are dead, of course, by that time. So now from 70 we went to 65, and of course, you know, we totally killed it because we live until 85, whatever it is, and then continue to live much, much longer. So this is the collapse of all of these things. So yes, I think these kind of things we are discussing is very useful, and Kerry is quite correct. The comment that usually comes about all of these ideas about education and so on is, beware that people have to learn certain specific skills. We should not violate high quality. And as a matter of fact, let's never forget that what is happening is factographic knowledge means scientific papers published increase at the rate of doubling each 9 years, which means that since you typically start your education university level at the age of 18 and is very demanding to get a degree, to get a PhD before the age of 27, it means that actually the total knowledge has doubled. And that is an incredible thing. Now we can say, for instance, on the other hand, as John Olga argues, that there is nothing new in physics, still is only quantum physics. You can have one more particle or one less particle, but still is quantum physics. Or somebody in law can say still is the basic few tenets of the golden rule and things like that. But no, this is not that, because things will change. And they are dramatically changing, and we are even unaware how do they change. So yes, we have a number of problems, but this is why it is so fascinating to live now. I mean, obviously we cannot be bored. I mean, that's a very good thing. Mr. Chairman, I simply
thank you for